Hello? Hello? Okay, great. All right, so before that gets any further, I should bring up val.town. Okay, cool. All right, no deck, nothing too crazy. We're just gonna chat about building websites. All right, hello everybody. Hello everybody. Welcome to Norfolk.js this month. It's January 2026. Okay, you are here at Norfolk.js because you wanted to be here. Congratulations. And we're going to talk about val.town. What is val.town? val.town, I call it a nice place for JavaScript. What it started out as is a place where you could write some code and run it. Just right in the browser. If you're familiar with AWS Lambda, you can think of it like an AWS Lambda in execution. Have you ever used the GitHub gist to store a snippet? It's like storing a snippet that can run. What I used it for at first were webhooks, because it'll accept post requests. So if you ever need a place to catch some form data that you control, welcome to your server side. You can just write a post endpoint, it'll respond to a post request or a GET request, and it's an HTTP trigger. So in this little thing, you could write JavaScript code like console.log, it's praise cage, and you can run it. And then you'll see the log, and it's just all here in the browser. You're not managing any of the infrastructure or choosing any of the stuff that goes on. Now that's kind of cool. When I was first using it on Microsoft Bing rewards page, if you knew that that existed, if you go and you click a button every day, you get a couple of tokens. You get 1,200 tokens and you can turn it into 200 Overwatch coins. So I wrote a little bot to go to the page every day and check whether or not I could click the button. I still have to click it. They know if I click it or not, but they don't know that I know when I'm able to click it or not. And that was my automation to make sure I got my reward points throughout the week. So that was my Overwatch coin checker. And it ran on a cron. So beyond just an HTTP trigger, get and post, I don't know how to use the other ones. You can do a cron trigger. Anybody doesn't know what cron is? Okay, so a cron is an expression that says, on every Tuesday, run this function. So you can give it a very short syntax, cron. It's like regex for time. Do you know what regex is? Regex is like if you wanted a really complicated way to search things, but you need it to be as compact as possible because you're helping the machine out, not humans. That's what regex is. You want to help the machine find things, so you learn a very arcane formula for it. Cron just does that for time. You don't type in lexically every Friday at noon. You give it some weird stars and curly braces and stuff. I just Google it every single time, but that is how you can trigger a val. So you can trigger it with an HTTP request, you can trigger it on a schedule with a cron job, and then you can also trigger it with email, which is fun, right? To be able to have it respond and send emails. Now, for a free account, they make it so that you can't just build a spam bot. It'll only send emails to the email that's registered to the account that you're using. But it's great for notifications, and I'll get to the full demo of how I gave myself notifications as we go on. But yeah, so this is val.town. It's a place to run JavaScript functions that are triggered by a specific time, an HTTP event, or an email. At first there were single functions responding to single events, but in the last couple of months, they've ramped it up into being more fuller stack. So technically on the back end, all of this is running Dino. Who's not familiar with Dino? Okay, yeah, okay, so do you know what Node is? If I said Node.js, you got that? Okay, the guy who wrote Node.js wrote Dino. So he wrote Node.js again, but in a different language. And it's a little more streamlined, and he's trying to monetize it so it has a private cloud. But you can think of it as another JavaScript engine. What's cool about it is it'll just do the TypeScript without having to transpile, because it's built into the binary. It just knows how to TypeScript. I had reluctantly learned TypeScript 3 or 4 years ago, getting onto a project for work. And I learned that TypeScript is fun when you know what you want to do. Otherwise, it's just really in the way. But once you have a better idea of what the code should actually do, you can add these stricter types to all of your functions. And it makes things more manageable on a larger scale project. And a lot of that just sounds like nonsense before you know what it is, so don't feel bad if that just sounds like nonsense. But does anybody have experience getting into TypeScript lately? Yeah? Is that about how did you describe it?
Yeah, Astro is
it TypeScript first?
on type safety, and it is great if you like to get yelled at by your computer off of social media.
Yes.
I mean, it's better to have a compile time error than run a general.
There's trade-offs for both.
It builds and there's some assurance that
There's trade-offs for both. I've been using it long enough now where it feels more familiar. The tooling is just a single binary. I always still have to have Node anyway. That's just reality. It's not going away. I still have to have it. But because this is in Dino, you can do they handle a lot of extra scaling stuff that Node.js couldn't do administratively as easily. Just because when it was built, it just didn't have that scope yet. And with a decade of time on top of Node.js, the guy who created it was like, yeah, I would rescope how this stuff works. And then by including TypeScript, this enables a service like val.town, where you can do one of my coolest patterns that I like to do. You write TypeScript, you write a TSX file into val.town that returns components, and it will render HTML back to the front end. So it's a really cool way to kind of like server render without a build step, without transpiling. You just write TSX, you return your HTML chunk, send it on through. Sometimes you just want a dashboard, sometimes you just want a report. It's static, but you need a little bit of runtime data fetching. In response to the call or in response to the timer, go grab the data, build the thing, send it back as HTML, and it's fresh every time. That's what val.town enables. On the free account, you should be able to do all kinds of stuff with it. I don't know exactly how they're running it under the hood, but it hasn't felt laggy or anything to me. And they've been adding features like a SQLite instance scoped to every val, and object storage scoped to every val. So if you wanted to build something that had a profile picture and persisted user data, you could do it all within a single project. This whole project idea is new to me because I'd never put so much functionality into a single val before. This is like one project. So what did I actually build? Have y'all ever used Notion? Do you know what that is? Notion is like a online personal wiki thing. I pay monthly for it for the pro version. But it's basically like where I keep my blog, because you can turn any page into a public URL. So like I'll just write nonsense, and then whatever I feel like publishing, I'll just send to public or whatever. But in Notion, I should be able to pull this up. I have a list of my blood sugar levels because I was recently diagnosed type 2 diabetic. And I had to start doing this stuff. And it's so difficult because I gotta stab myself and I hated it. I hated everything about it. So I was like, gotta tickle the neurodivergent brain of mine in order to get anything done. So why don't I over-engineer something and then also turn it into a presentation for Norfolk.js and maybe we can get some free cookies.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
I was telling the girls earlier, I was like, sometimes me yelling stuff turns into cookies. So, I like Notion. I've been using it 7-8 years now because it's got an API and it doesn't suck. And they don't hate developers. And they're able to make money without getting real jerky about it. It is programmatic. All you gotta do is go in, ask for an API key, and then from val.town, I can insert data and read data in this database.
That's awesome.
It's just a spreadsheet table. And so when I go back to val.town, right in here, I have this thing called a collector, and it's called blood sugar report cron. You don't have to make it TypeScript. You could write JavaScript and it'll still do the same thing. val.town has a standard library, which is kind of fun. So that's where I'm able to use email methods and put things into a SQLite database. And the SQLite database just comes with it. Like it's just automatically scoped to your project. But it's SQLite. And they partner with another startup who does SQLite hosting. But basically, you get SQLite, you get blob storage. Blob storage is like object storage, like where you can store CSV files or text files, JPEGs, images, that kind of stuff. And that's part of their standard library. So you're not using a framework, but the environment is your framework. When you write this code, it runs on val.town. It's a val. So can you port it to something else? Sure, 100%. But you're using val methods for getting and setting and all that stuff. So the same things apply to any project where you need server side. You're gonna have to decide what are your routes gonna look like. You're gonna have to decide where am I getting my data? How tightly do I wanna couple that data fetching with the platform itself? I'm pretty breezy. If it's all included, I'll just use it. It's already running Dino. I can already just type in TypeScript. All this does when I run it is go to my Notion table here, grab these numbers, and emails me a fun report. So let's see. If I go here and I just hit run, I've already written the code. And you see, I'm just returning, it's an email. So you can just return HTML and it'll just be in the email. I hate programming email. It's awful because the views and it's just awful. But the bot does it okay. I don't have to worry about it so much anymore. The bot does a decent job. Okay, so it ran, it got the entries. So now if I share my email with everybody, I should be okay. Nothing too crazy in here. Blood sugar report came in at 729. Yes! Ba-bam! My blood sugar weekly roll-up. It grabs the last 7 days whenever I run that report. And I have it to automatically run every Tuesday. And then it'll tell me like what my streaks are. I miss some. If I miss them, what my average is. So yeah, I get an email, and it's really cool because it's very fast, and it's immediate, and it's built in. So I asked the bot what to do, and it did it, and it included it all. So I was like, okay, cool. So I can have some data, I can put it in Notion, I can read from Notion, I can write back to Notion. Can I write back to Notion is what I asked myself. And so I was like, what if I did a food report? I hate logging food because there's so much to do. So I was like, what if I have another Notion table where all I put in is the food, like the name of the food? Okay, so here's the idea. I just make a new thing here and I put in the food log food here, and I put macaron because they're delicious and they spike my blood sugar. All right, so I don't have to fill out none of that. Then we come back to val.town and I run food report, and in theory it should go figure it out, fill it back in. I was like, if I can read data, can I write data? That's fun. So we'll go back to food log, and it wrote data. There's 80 calories in a macaroon.
Yeah.
And so from here, I was like, that's fun. What else could I do? So I can read data, write data from two separate tables, from two separate functions that are called independently. I was like, I don't want any downtime. So I look into the kind of architecture that it has. This may look monolithic, but it is not running monolithically. These are all running like microservices, just natively. When this function is called, it'll run. If it crashes or it has an error, it won't crash anything else in this project stack. Now, let's say you wanted more clever routing, right? Like / resource or whatever. You can build a val that is a router, and you can use a web framework or not. Basically, within your val, there is a path assumption, so you can route between vals. And you can write the router in whatever you want. I haven't done it yet, but like for Dino, there's a framework called Hano, and it looks just like Express. You just establish app. So when the request comes in, it just wakes up, like essentially like an API gateway. So it just wakes up that function, the function initializes, creates an API gateway, routes your request, sends it to whatever worker val's gonna be catching that data, does it, and then shuts all down. At this level, you're not managing concurrency, you're not managing load, you're not managing memory, you're just writing some code that can execute on these triggers. And nothing is being shared. Sound cool so far? Yeah, so I can read data, write data. Then I was like, having this in here is cool, but what if I wanted more insights? So then I was like, let's use the SQLite database that comes with it to do this roll-up. And when I run a report, it'll asynchronously also write to the SQLite. So that'll give me my weeklies. And I'll be able to track longer stretches of time, because eventually reading from something like Notion is probably going to hit a limit faster than SQLite will hit a limit. And while I don't think I will reach that limit with twice-a-day logs, I wanted to see just how easy it would be to send stuff into SQLite, since it comes with it anyway. And it's pretty good. And this is new as of Friday, the ability to see all this here. Before, I would have to go to another portal that was like, it was another val that was hacked together. Then they just built it into the product. Like Friday, they dropped it. I was like, holy shit, this is cool. Now I don't have to show all the workarounds that come with administering a SQLite thing. So the docs are pretty decent. If you get started, if you just walk through it like I did, like you have a place to run code. How do you trigger that code? You have 3 things that can trigger that code. And then once you've triggered that code, you could do stuff with email, you can do stuff with SQLite, you can do stuff with blob storage. And here's a fun thing. They give you a bit of this nano inference. So remember I was like, I don't want to have to figure out what the calories are. I used their proxy implementation for an inference. And so whatever I type into my Notion database, the LLM reads and then calls a real food API to get actual nutrition data. Because I asked it to just tell me what the nutrition data was, and it just makes it up. It's nothing like consistent. So let me draw it out in that way. So comes into val, and val has an open API wrapper essentially. And then it goes to OpenAPI, or OpenAI. Sorry, OpenAI, not API. They do have an, it's an OpenAI API. API OKA. All right, so we're writing a val, it calls OpenAI. OpenAI does the inference and then calls a poorly named API called fat secret API. And that actually gives me the nutrition data, like structure. And the OpenAI inference will negotiate serving size. And once I get that nutrition data, then that nutrition data then gets written to the Notion. And so far, I have paid for only my Notion account, and that's it. Because right now, val.town is covering the use of nano inference. So you're not going to do anything big with it. And like you can request like a minute or so. Like there's service limits if you want something bigger, or you just bypass that all completely and you bring your own API key and do whatever you want. But that little bit of inference is really handy because you're doing some data munging and you don't really want to have to write out every single transform. If I had to write my own classifier for writing in cheese omelet, and then that turns into 2 eggs and an ounce of cheese, and that's a lot. And the Fat Secret API, I signed up for a nonprofit with Norfolkjs so I could get their premium because it's got an NLP endpoint, but that's not free. What they did was they upgraded me for the ability to do it, and I was like, y'all suck. But when you want it, it's $250 a month for a dev account. So plenty of people are making money on it. But yeah, I don't need that. So the little bit of inference that val.town gives me is just enough for me to get some results from the Fat Secret API, shove that back into Notion. So now we've got data going all over the place, all within this thing, totally free. What's not to love? And then we can also, is it this one? This one, monthly report. This is a TSX file, and it can just, this is the rendered, like just-in-time rendered data of the month that pulls from the SQLite. So if I wanted to specifically scope my Notion data, I'm not actually polling through all the Notion data itself. I'm using the roll-ups that I'm getting every week to then compile it into this monthly view. But this is being served directly from that val. And this is, as I just run it, and I don't have any other months because I just built this, but it's cool. And I was really going for that Memphis group design look, Saved by the Bell squiggly. I'm 41, y'all. I'm having a serious midlife crisis. And yeah, the 90s, I yearn for them.
Can one val trigger another val?
Yes. You would just do it over HTTP. There's not an internal val method that I know of. Wait, I think I take that back. There probably is, but I haven't. I'm sure there is. So that's the demo and everything that you can do with it. There's still more like object storage and routing, like more in-depth routing. And you can remix vals. So from the beginning, you could just take somebody else's val and clone it in val.town and just start messing with it, like a gist or a GitHub repo. And then they just took that metaphor and just kept running with it. So when you're actually developing this stuff, it's interesting. They have a CLI called VT, and VT acts like Git. So you will VT create new, VT push, and then while you're working, you type VT watch, and your local changes will get synced with val.town. Otherwise, you have to work in the browser. Okay, got a couple minutes, but I'm pretty much almost done. I wanted to mention the VTCLI because this is primarily how you'll develop with it. Because when I was using it at first, it was just copy paste into the thing. But there was only like one function at a time, so it was fine. Like I just needed to check the Overwatch point. That's all I needed to do. But now that they're full-on apps, it's organized where you use this val CLI to push and pull and clone and all that stuff.
Do they have the concept of branches, or is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you can branch, you can fork. Yep, 100%. That's why it's a nice place for JavaScript. Let's see, so that is a pretty big overall run-through of the capabilities of a legit project. My challenge to myself now is to not abandon it after I've given this talk. It's to actually go back and fix the logic, make it look better, actually start to use it for a couple of months to see if it actually improves my behavior, which is the idea of this thing. At first I just had to log stuff, so I was putting it in my calendar because my calendar is a place I look at, but then I can't easily automate out of it. It's not really built to be a database, but that's what I was using it for because it was the first thing I could grab. And that's a lesson for just like how data even begins life. It's just wherever somebody can first put it down, and eventually you need a system around it, and then you find the limitations. Like, I can't take it out of my calendar. Are there other apps that do this? 100%, there's probably thousands of them.
You could use Notion forms.
Yeah, there's just tons and tons of ways to do this, but I had fun doing it this way and sharing it with y'all, and so I highly encourage you to check it out, and maybe they'll sponsor another meetup. Love you guys. Yeah, so that's val.town. Oh, I forgot to record this screen. All I recorded was, I promise I showed the website.
Just gotta
Fix it in post.
Yeah.
Put some B-roll. Just record.
Let's see.
Don't close any tabs.
Yeah. Okay.
It
So
looks like you can just import other people's vowels right into your vowel.
yes.
On it, just
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. You can call them.
Thousand.
Their namespace scoped. It's cool. I haven't done it a ton, but it's totally possible. And yeah, I've used it for 3 years now.
Oh wow.
Just seeing it grow up. This is essentially a web app compiler in the cloud for your projects. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially val.town, a nice place for JavaScript, and I like building on it and especially integrating it with this Notion stuff. I've just scratched the surface with just getting and setting data. There's people who have built out automations like for blog posts, like you write your post in Notion and then you can use val to just trigger it everywhere else. You could do a lot of stuff. I think if you're not logged into val.town, they have a clever tagline. Zapier for no-code engineers. Yeah, if you need back-end stuff, bots, Slack bots, they have browser automation, so integration with Puppeteer, which is really fun these days. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, check it out. And with that, any questions? Oh, I'll just open it up.